Hi, this is Kevin. Welcome to part 4 of my tutorial on generic class-based views. In this part, we're going to refactor all of the detail views in uh, the EZU project. So let's take a look at how the detail views currently work. Okay. Um, Let's run the application. Let's look at a few detail views, okay? So I'm going to start up the development server. And here we go. So to get to a detail view, we go to the list view and we click on one of the items. So here in the instructor list, we can click on Caroline Alsop, and you can see her first name, her last name, and there would be a list of sections, but we don't have any. So let's just go make sure we can find a list of sections. I know that I have sections, and if I go to the last page and then the previous one, you can find me, Trainer Kevin. And here are my sections. So that's all working fine. And we've got detail pages for each of our tables. Okay, so that's how all that's working, and it seems to be working just fine. So let's go to Instructor Detail. In fact, I have that up right here. Okay, and if we look at the code, okay, it's a class-based view. It's subclassing view. Okay. It has an implementation for get. Okay. And what does it do? Well, it gets the object itself, which is going to be the instructor. Okay. And then it builds a section list by calling sections all on instructor. And then it does a return of a render of the request, the template, and then it builds the context with instructor and section list. Okay, now, how do we do this with a generic class-based view? Well, we do this with detail view. So this is a page for detail view in the documentation as it exists today. And you can see it's a detail view. And you can see that it has a bunch of methods listed, okay? And we're going to override one of the methods. Okay, well, how do we know which one to override? And how does this all work? Well, this class, and really all of the generic class-based views, and to a certain extent the view class as well, they all are based on a design pattern that's been sort of identified for a long, long time. It's called the template method pattern. So this is one of the 23 or 24 design patterns that were identified long ago by Eric Gama and his co-authors in the book Design Patterns. And Gama and the co-authors are often affectionately called the Gang of Four because for me, I can remember Gama, but that's it. Okay, and so we need a tricky name for them. So how does the template method pattern work? Well, it's a design for a class, okay, And here's a Java class, I guess. And that's not going to help us a lot because we're not doing Java. But here's how it basically works. Uh, there's a method in the class that kind of controls the main action. Okay, and that method is kind of a template for what this class is supposed to do. It does action A, it does action B, it does action C, it does action D, and it assures that things get done in the right order, okay? And it typically provides implementation of all of the methods that it calls so that if we don't want to override the method, we don't have to. So let's go back and look at the documentation. So for the detail view class, here are some of the methods that we can override. Okay, what's the method that calls them that keeps these all in order? I don't think it's any of these. We'd have to actually go to the code to know. So we can override the setup. We can override the dispatch. Well, it might be dispatch. We can override HTTP method not allowed, get template names, etc. The one thing that we need to do, okay, is we need to get the context data. Okay, and you really have to think about this when you're overriding these. Okay, this class is going about its work and it needs the context and it needs it to be populated. Okay, so we're going to override this, and in our override, we're going to put the code that populates the context. Okay, so let's go look at how that kind of code works. Okay, all right. So we have an instructor detail view here, right? And let's just put that view code, toggle it into a comment because that tends to serve us pretty well. And then I create 3 returns there to get the new code in the place that I like it. And now I'm going to copy the instructor detail code out of my already baked version. Okay. And here's what you can see. First of all, it uses the detail view class. It's a subclass of detail view, and we need an import for that. So let's hover over it, take the import that it offers us, and okay, we have all of our imports. So let's look at this code. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to set the instance a variable model in order to configure this to work with the instructor model class. Okay? All right. And now we're only going to override one of the methods that we would have been able to override. This is get context data. So that's what we're going to do. Okay? We're providing an implementation for get context data. Why do we need to get context data? Well, let's go back and look at the app itself, and we'll see why, if I can find a way back to the app. Yeah, there it is. Okay, and when I say the app, let's look at the let's look at this. So if we look at instructor detail, okay, not only does it have information from the instructor, in fact, let's go to instructors, and let's go last page and the previous one. Let's go to my instructor page again, Kevin Trainer. Okay, so not only do we have information about the instructor, okay, and the basic infrastructure of the class can retrieve the instructor object that you're on. Okay, that's no problem. What it can't retrieve are the other things that you're going to put onto the page, like this list of sections, okay? So this is the work that we need to do in the method that we are overriding, okay? So let's look at what we do. Okay, so in get context data, okay, we could call because it's an object-oriented method, it has a reference to self, and then it's going to have it's going to be passed a bunch of keyword arguments, okay, that are can be accessed in a dictionary with the name quarks, okay. So here's what we do. First of all, we can't just create a context object, which is a dictionary, as you remember. We can't just create one because we already have one. Why do we already have one? Well, the context option is currently holding the object for this page, the instructor. That's already been retrieved and put into the context. So we need to get the context object so we can add to it. So how do we do this? Well, we call this superclass, okay? This is how we call a method in our superclass, okay? And then the method that we call is get context data for our superclass, okay? And we pass through the quarks. And what we get back is the context object before we add to it, okay? This context object is a dictionary, okay? Key value pairs, okay? So how do we get access to the instructor object? Well, it turns out that we have inherited a method from our superclass called getObject, so we just call getObject. What object? Well, it's the object for this page. Okay, the Django design and infrastructure is essentially one page per object, right? And that's what this is. Okay, well that makes sense. So we have the instructor. How do we get a section list? Well, it's not hard to do. You can just go up to the code that we're replacing, and you can find code to pull out a section list. So provided that you've used the same variable name for instructor, okay, you can just take this line of code and paste it down in here. Okay, right here, section list gets assigned instructor dot sections and a call to all, and that's what we had up there. Okay, now are we done? Not quite yet. We need to add that reference into the dictionary that is the context. Okay, so we refer to the dictionary, which we're calling context, and the item that we want to add, it has the key section underscore list, and then the value that we want to assign as part of the key value pair is the variable section list. And are we done? No, we have to return the context object. So a get context data returns a new context object. Sorry, it returns an updated context object because we got a context object, we added to it, and then we returned a reference to it. Okay, so that's all we have to do. Okay, now this might seem kind of indirect, but the rationale here is we can almost do everything automatically. If all we had to show was the detail for the instructor themselves and not the data that they're related to, we wouldn't even have to implement this. Okay, but typically on our detail pages, we're listing and showing links to the other objects in the database that are related to the object for which we're doing the detail. Okay, let's go back and test it. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this back and I'm going to refresh it, and it works just fine. Okay, let's go to instructors again and just pick another instructor who probably doesn't have any sections that you're teaching. Bella Bailey. Yeah, and that's fine. She's doing fine. Are we done? No, we're not. Let's make sure that we get rid of the commented code and do a quick test. What we're testing is that we haven't broken the code by deleting lines of text. Okay, so we're just going to come back and we're going to refresh it. Yeah, it works just fine. No problem. So that one's done. Okay, so how many of these are we going to do? Well, together, we've already done instructors. The next one that we're going to do is going to be section detail, and we'll do that together. And we'll take a cloning approach, okay, which is the approach that you're going to take to the rest. So after we do sections together, I'm going to turn you loose to work on your own, and you're going to do courses, semesters, students, registrations, okay? So let's do sections together. Okay, so right now, section, if we go to a section like IS439 in the spring of 2021, you can see that we've got all the data. Okay, so we have the course, the section name, okay, and then we have the semester, the instructor, and a list of registrations. All seems to be working great. Okay, let's go do that. So here's what I usually do. While I'm still on the instructor detail, I highlight it and copy it, okay? And then I go down to the next one. I want to find section detail. Section list, section detail. And section detail has quite a bit of code because you recall we were displaying a lot of data, right? Yeah. So let's take the existing code for section detail and toggle that into a comment. Okay, and then let's come down and enter 3 enters. And let's paste the instructor detail code here. And now we're going to do the changing that makes this a clone operation. Okay, so the class name has got to now be section detail. Okay, and then the model class is section. Okay, and now the override for get context data, we are first of all, the object that we get is not an instructor, it's a section. Okay. And what do we want here? Well, we have to retrieve the data. Okay, so let's do this. Let's, we certainly are not going to create a section list because we're on this section. So let's get rid of that. Okay. What do we create? Well, we create a semester, course, instructor, registration list. Okay, these shouldn't be too hard. Now, if I hadn't put these comments in these, I could copy them really easily. But I'm going to do these one at a time. So I'm going to copy semester and put it down here. Okay, and then course, and put that down here. And instructor. No, that's not what I want to do. The instructor line that I want is not where we're building the context. I want the instructor line up here. Right? Semester course instructor. And we got a little too much text there. Let's back up over that. Okay. And then the last one is we want to make a registration list. And we already have the code that does that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, now let's build this context. Okay, actually, the context is already constructed. We just need to add entries into the dictionary, right? So I'm going to get rid of my blank line. Now, here's what I usually do. I usually just put a couple of X's in here, and I put a couple of X's over here. Okay, and now how many things do I need to put in? Well, I don't need to do the section. That's already in there. So 1, 2, 3, 4 things. So I'm going to copy this 3 times, and then we're going to cut and paste, or we're going to type over or something like that. So we've got 4 things all together. Okay, so the first one's going to be semester. Highlight that, paste it over. Highlight the other part, paste that over. And then I'm going to copy course and put it down here. And then I'm going to copy instructor. And copy it over here too. And last, I'm going to copy registration list. And copy it down here too. And that should do it. Okay. So we retrieved all of these things. Okay. And then we use them to build the context. Now, I just want to point out, okay, that one could take these intermediate steps out of the code, and we could just assign. We could come down here and we could say, we could take what we're assigning and just assign it right down here, and we would have less code. Okay, and a lot of people would say that that's better code. Okay, and perhaps it is. I'm not going to do it that way because I want this to be easy to read. I want the directions to be easy for you to follow. Does it add a little bit of execution time to take that extra step? Yeah, it probably does. Is it really significant? I don't think it is. You know, people could argue with me. Okay. In terms of what you do in your program, you can do it either way. You can do it let me back this off. You can do it the more deliberate way that I did it, where you load up the variables and then you use the variables to populate the dictionary, or you can populate them directly I don't have a preference for what you do one way or the other. Okay? Okay. But all the work needs to get done. All right. So now we're ready to test. Okay. So I'm going to click off the code to make sure it gets saved. And I'm going to come over here and let's see. Let's go to section. All right, and let's go to a section. Here's a section that doesn't have any registrations. I remember that. The one from IS430 in spring at 2021. And then let's go to IS439 in spring at 2021. And here are the registrations. So that seems to be working fine. All right, and now before we're done, we need to get rid of the commented code. Okay, so let's get rid of this commented code. All right, we've got 2 blank lines there. And let's just come back and refresh our screen to make sure it's not broken. Okay, so that's all we're going to do together. Together we've done the detail for instructors and sections. Now on your own, you're going to do courses, semesters, students, registrations, okay? And if you follow the method that we followed for the first 2, it should go just fine. So I'm going to leave you to that, and I'm going to say bye until I'm back in the next part. Bye-bye.